Hi there, and welcome to this review of what came up in the June 6 SBL exam and how I hope you approached it. So this video has two purposes. People just taking the exam, they want to see what came up for other people, and some people might be reviewing it as part of their revision and hopefully get some help on how to develop answers to questions. I think this particular exam will also be reviewed in an examiner report, so I might do a review of that later in the year. So the 2026 SBL exam was about a hair salon business, and there was pre-C material that we have digested. So that ACCA can accommodate all the different locations in which exams are set around the world, not all exams take place at the same time. So in the interests of fairness and no communication between people around the world of what came up, there are a number of variants. And I'm going to talk about the different variants because I have students all over the world. So some of my students would have taken it in London, some would have taken it in Canada, some Australia, some India, all over the world really. Also in the interests of fairness, although I knew what all these exam questions were on the actual exam date, I have waited some time before producing this video so that anyone who's doing retakes or appeals or anything like that has no benefit of knowing what came up. So I'm going to share with you what came up from the various variants, and this is only able because of my students all around the world sharing exactly what came in their exam. And after my review, I'll share with you what we did in a pre-scene, what we did in the mock, and see whether it's worth doing mocks and pre-scene reviews before the exam. Also a quick overview of how you're going to answer it. So let's have a look. In terms of the first question many students got, they got a question on evaluation. So what happened here was students were given some information in an exhibit and they were asked to evaluate it. So they were given some financial information, they were given some KPIs, and they were asked to analyze the performance over a specific period. So if this question came up, I hope you were happy with it, because it's really very straightforward to apply this question to the knowledge you would have gained on the course. The question was in the area of strategic choice, and you would know that when we're looking at strategic choice, what we're going to look at when we have an option on the table to evaluate would be its suitability, its feasibility, and its acceptability. We wouldn't necessarily do it directly like that in our answer, but that would be a great catalyst to help arrange our thoughts. Yep. So when we think of suitability, is it suitable? Does it fall in line with our mission and our objectives? And actually this question asked for KPIs. So we would be thinking about whether the movements in the organization's performance were in line with what the KPIs were. Is it feasible? That would deal with resources. I think of resources as 6 M's: money, manpower, material, machinery, and makeup. And is it acceptable? So when we're thinking about acceptability, would the key stakeholders be happy? So that was the first question. There was a second part to the question where we were asked to look at management remuneration and comment whether we thought it was a good idea or not. So should be no real big deal with that question. There was obviously a variant. Before I go into that, had you read my article, which is on the ACCA website on the strategic planning process part 2, this talks all about strategic choice. It talks about all the things that we need to think about to catalyze an answer to a question on strategic choice. And really, if you read that and you were looking at the exam question, you would have done really well. So make sure, if you haven't already, look at the articles. On my courses, all the most relevant articles I give linkages to, and I ask my students to summarize them themselves their way, because that helps with memory retention. If you haven't looked at this article, please do so. But just to cover all bases, there is another article which talks more about the analysis part of the strategic process, where we're looking at our internal, our external, and our key stakeholders. So you may want to have a look at that too. But really, that question should have been straightforward. And the alternative that students taking exams at other times got was also an evaluation. This time it was asking you to evaluate growth. So the hairdressing company was going to expand its hairdressers in gyms on, or as an alternative, it was going to acquire another hairdressing chain. Had you read my articles, you would have found this pretty straightforward. So yeah, internal growth, acquisition, suitability, feasibility, and acceptability would have set you up here. What did the next question talk about? Well, the next question was talking about different leadership styles to adopt following a strategic change. So there was obviously an exhibit that talked about a change, and it was important that you didn't apply your knowledge on change here, but more your knowledge on leadership style. So there isn't one thing to think about, but if you thought about tell, sells, joins, consults, if you thought about autocratic, democratic, that kind of thing, that would have worked for you quite well. Talk about the fact that if you are a leader, you set the tone from the top, you're a driver of change, you're a communicator. It'd be fairly broad what you could say here, but it wasn't about change, it was about leadership. So, what style would be appropriate? There was then a question about internal auditor independence. So again, if you done a basic amount of study, this should have been pretty much a gift. What compromise, what could affect their independence. So we think about their advocacy, we think about whether they could have got self-interest, and ASIF is a thing I would have used on mind maps with you. And also, how do we make sure they remain independent? Well, you probably set up an audit committee, you make everyone kind of be accountable to that audit committee and not to the CFO and that kind of stuff. So yeah, again, just a reasonable amount of knowledge would have helped you on your way there. What other questions came up then in addition to those? Well, there was an interesting question that some students got, and that was about evaluating investment sources. So basically they provided in an exhibit, do you do it via equity, do you do it via debt and other kinds of investment, and asked you for each of the investments suggested to evaluate, the pros and cons of it. So there probably isn't anything directly linked to that in your study notes if you go on to the study hub, but that would be picking up on knowledge from already taken exams, financial management probably in particular. So it just shows SBL does require you to have a broad financial awareness as well as specific knowledge of the SBL syllabus. And if you had confidence to express your view there, you would have done fine. So different styles were suggested. You were asked to look at drawbacks and benefits of each. There was then a question on e-marketing. Had you done mocks and stuff with me on that? You would be delighted because it was almost exactly the same question as I put in the mocks. So you should have been happy with that. And really, if you were hopefully fully conversant with the acronym, the 6 I's, and applied it in the context of hairdressing, you would have been absolutely fine. Yeah, so that should have been a big high score marker for those of you who did the mocks, and I hope you're happy with that. So, what can we do? Use the 6 I's, make sure you apply it, and you'll be absolutely fine. There was then a question on sustainability and ethics, and we did look at this also because there was mentions of it in the pre-scene. What are the ingredients in the shampoo? Could they harm your skin? What about the amount of water used in the salon? All of that kind of thing is fair game to a business which is worried about such things, and hence you got a question on it, and if you did the mocks again you would have been pretty happy. Obviously that was all related to hairdressing. The other thing that would help on that is if you are reading company reports and you look at the kind of things they evaluate, so go and have a look at Tesco, go and have a look at Diageo, go and have a look at BP, Shell, those kind of people. What do they measure to assess their sustainability? And becoming comfortable reading those things and aware of what is included would help you a lot on a question like that. So let's have a look at my revision mock that we did before it. On question 1, we looked at an evaluation of an expansion proposal, pretty much what many students got in the exam. We then did a question on environmental issues and a course of action to deal with them. Yes, we would have covered it. We had a question on corporate governance looking at the relevance of family-owned companies. So in a family-owned company, the kind of relevance of agency theory is not quite so much. So because the family own it and manage it, and if they mess up, well, they lose the money. Whereas in a shareholder-led company, the shareholders own it and the management manage it. We looked at how to use IT to increase efficiency. Might have been a little bit of e-marketing on that, but not a lot. And we talked about cybersecurity. So we drew attention to those things. There wasn't anything in the exam on cybersecurity. And then in the mock written specifically after the pre-scene was released, so having read the pre-scene, what areas were highlighted as things we should know more about and be familiar with. I went without sleep for 2 or 3 days. I wrote a mock on the pre-scene. And what did I think? Well, I thought IT was a bit of an issue, and I did evaluation of a new booking and CRM system. Nothing came up on that, unfortunately, for anyone. Employee satisfaction and the impact on change. Maybe some of the leadership things could have come in, but not all of them, but a bit of it. Question 2, environmental performance and impact on stakeholders. Well, that was asked for many candidates. Data analytics and drawbacks, there wasn't anything on that. Benefits of outsourcing, we did something in a mock, there wasn't anything on that. Question on e-marketing, it was almost exactly the same question. But when I do a pre-scene mock, obviously I'm not trying to question spot, I'm just trying to draw your attention to areas which are relevant. And it's sometimes difficult to get all of those areas in one mock exam. So in addition to doing the actual pre-scene mock on the ISS platform and getting it marked by SBL markers, so it's exactly the same as your exam. It's done to time on the IIS platform. It gets not just marked, you get comprehensive comments from actual ACCA SBL comments. So they write lots of things about what you're doing well and where you need to improve. But in addition to that, I also provide to my mock students some additional questions, and each of those questions have a suggested answer, and they also have a full video debrief showing that you could have gone that way or you could have gone that way and you would have got credit. So what did I look at in these additional mock questions? I did a question on integrated reporting and key performance indicators. Might have helped on that exam evaluation question where there was something on KPIs. I did a question on a social media strategy to help in marketing. I did a question of acquisition of another hairdressing chain. There was an exact question in the exam of an acquisition of another hairdressing chain that many people were required to do. I did a question on cybersecurity risks of online booking. It looked like we should know a bit more about IT. That came through in the pre-scene. So I wrote a question on that and wrote a debrief and a suggested answer. Enterprise risk management, again, linked to that area. So we did a question on that. I did a question on governance in a privately owned company just to draw attention to that because that is important. So yeah, that's what we looked at. So let's just see how all of this helped with the actual exam. So in the actual exam, there was a question on evaluation of growth, looking at KPIs. Some people got a slightly different evaluation question, which was evaluation of growth. It was an acquisition and internal growth. There was a question on leadership style. There was a question on e-marketing. There was a question on evaluation of investments. And there was a question on sustainability and ethics. So how well, if you did the mocks, were you prepared for this? Well, in terms of evaluation of growth and looking at KPIs, we did an exact question on it. So we were really well prepared for that. Evaluation of growth and acquisition. Coincidentally, I did a question directly on acquisition as well. In terms of leadership style, we didn't go into it in the revision mock, but incidentally, on the tuition mock, I did do a question on leadership style. So if you did a full course with me, you would have done a question on it, but we didn't do it in the pre-scene mock. So maybe half of that was covered with some of the stuff on change. Yes, exactly the same question on e-marketing. A question on evaluation of investments? No, I didn't do a question on any mock for that, but that's not really available anywhere on the SBL syllabus and requires you to have an opinion, I would suggest. So hopefully you would have gained confidence to express opinion and answer that question well. And then a question on sustainability and ethics. Well, yes, we did do something on that. So it goes to show how important it is to fully familiarize yourself with the industry, fully familiarize yourself with the things going on in the pre-scene material so that you are comfortable about the industry and you are resilient to anything that can be thrown at you. Obviously, if you get the benefit of doing some analysis and then get the benefit of doing some mocks based on the actual pre-scene, well, you'll see how your chances are pretty massively improved. And you can, this might be a one-off. Have a look at what happened in the March exam. Have a look at what happened in the exams before that. And you will see there is a recurring theme that, because I've done this for 30 years and I can, got very strong kind of awareness of how the examining team think and how the syllabus is going to be examined, you hopefully will get statistics like this every time. Okay, so to conclude, I want you to remember that ACCA SBL is not an exam like tax or SBR. It is not a technical exam. You cannot pass it or have any hope of passing it by learning lots of technical theory. Okay, you can't do that. SBL is not able to be learned. SBL, you need to understand what is going on. We develop understanding through doing past questions, showing how they apply, and it's so important that we apply things in the context of the scenario. Absolute key. How does it differ to other ACCA exams? Well, I would argue that it's very different, and the key difference is the rationale. There is technical knowledge which you need to look at, but that technical knowledge needs to be looked at in a leadership context. Yep, you're a strategic leader. You're a strategic leader in the workplace. Yep, so important to think of it like that. And also you need to demonstrate professionalism. So you need to kind of visualize, if you were in the workplace, how would you communicate these things? How would you structure your arguments? How would you address people? Absolute key. Okay, so remember that. If you're using this as part of your revision, I hope that helps. If I then just briefly talk about key reasons which people fail SBL, I want to share with you the following. So the key reasons people fail SBL are for poor timing, for poor layout, poor mark focus, and not enough practice with feedback. If you are preparing for your SBL exam and you are not doing mocks to time on the ACCA SBL platform, you're not giving yourself the best opportunity. If you're not getting some feedback on what the best layout looks like, or what the best mark focus looks like, you're not giving yourself the best opportunity. I can help you make the most of your opportunity. Get in contact with me via WhatsApp and I'll do all my best. Be careful about a lot of fake news online. Only deal with people who are ACCA approved learning providers. I'm an ACCA approved learning provider. I'm a former PQ tutor of the year. You can trust what I say. If you're still revising, all the very best of luck. If you've taken the exam, it's your last one, fantastic. Chill out. Don't think about exams anymore and enjoy your life living exam for free. Thank you very much for listening and all the best.